Hello everyone, I am Ben Woshinski, president of the US TAC Association, here for the next match in the 2018 US TAC Open Finals bracket. Today we have a game between SultanPepper and archvenison. They are playing a semifinal losers bracket match. So let's go to the bracket real quick to show you exactly where we're at and what you'll be seeing this afternoon. So here you can see we have SultanPepper versus archvenison on the bottom in the losers bracket, and this is the semifinal. The next player will go up against Fwibib in the losers bracket final, and the winner of that match will then move on to the grand final against No Hat Coder. It's going to be an exciting few games, just 3 matches left in the entire tournament. And I do have to say a big thank you, of course, to our sponsors of this tournament. First and foremost is Wormwood Gaming. They've been a big help to us, a sponsor since the very beginning of the association. And they have put up the beautiful Purple Heart TAC box set. You can see that on their website. Of course, it's gorgeous. And then, of course, also thank you to Andrew Cookson, who has provided a couple of very, very lovely looking hand-tooled leather boards that will be going to the 2nd and 3rd place finishers. Now, it looks like the players are just about ready. So let's go over to the game here, and I will give them the go-ahead that they can start at any time. Looks like archvenison will be taking white first. And let's get this match started. Now, these players are both in the losers bracket, as I said, and the winner will be playing against Fwibib. And interestingly, SultanPepper here was knocked down into the losers bracket by Fwibib, so we could be seeing a rematch of that game. All right, we have adjacent corners as the opening, and I think we will probably see the standard split down the middle. Probably might see a D2, yep, from archvenison. And Sultan, he does like to mirror a little bit longer, so I expect a capstone maybe here on E3 from Sultan. It's a pretty standard opening to make sure that white can't run away with things. There it is. Now, from here, we definitely could see things deviate from what's normally done. Arch could go ahead and place somewhere else. He decided to kind of do a wraparound, so he's looking to not just concentrate on the vertical build. He's also working on a little bit of a horizontal. If you haven't been watching the game so far, the players do each start with 10 minutes, and then, as you can see, they are up from there on time. They do receive an additional 20 seconds for each move that they make, so the players can continue to play as long as they are making progress in the game. All right, Sultan's making sure he's got more pieces with a good exposure to all of these pieces from Arch. Arch is working more on that horizontal direction, as I pointed out. We'll have to see if he wants to continue that. And indeed, he plays on F5. Now, I also wanted to note that Arch has not yet brought his capstone into the game, so he might be looking to save that for once some captures start somewhere in this center area. If Sultan is forced to vacate one of those squares with a capture, could make for an attractive spot for that capstone to come in. Sultan's taking his time, thinking about how to handle the response here. Probably does. This position might warrant that, because there are a few sequences where Arch could place a few stones, such as this arrangement, playing A6, C6, and that would give him a double direction threat. A two-directional tack threat through here, and then, of course, also through here. It's not too likely to catch Sultan off guard, especially given the amount of time he's thinking this through. But that is the kind of thing that the more skilled players do go for, is you want to have a multi-pronged threat. Okay, Sultan does decide to hop onto his own piece, giving himself the hard cap. If you're not familiar, hard cap is when the capstone is on top of a flat piece of its own color underneath. Gives that capstone quite a bit of additional power, and makes it much more threatening. Walls, normally when a player places a standing stone or a wall, that can actually really kind of get in the way of the capstone moving, but with this hard cap, it does let the capstone more easily just kind of flatten those walls without a consequence. Alright, Arch decides to make the tack threat. Horizontal threat here. All he needs is a5. So Sultan will have to... He could place on a5 to just delay the capture one move longer, but he does look well positioned. He could bring his hard capstone up on top of there, and that would actually give him a chance. If he wanted to use that at this time, he could run out over 2 squares and really shut down the threat. He didn't opts instead for f4 upward. Arch, all right, f6. He plays on f6, so he's looking to just recapture onto f5 there, regain his piece probably. Sultan might want to play onto f4, basically showing that he can just continue to recapture as well. And looking at the reserve pieces right now, we can see, okay, Sultan does play another flat there. That archvenison here does have a little bit of a lead in the number of stones played onto the board. If you can manage that and not have them all just stuck underneath other pieces of Sultan's, that could become a good advantage. All right, so this is a tack threat through there, or if a capture down comes through, straight across. Sultan's decently prepared. He could capture down. Might result in a capture back up, which renews the threat. Could also move his capstone up, which, while not moving the capstone towards the center, which might be more preferable, I think that would do a pretty good job of really slowing down the momentum and the tempo that Arch has built here. Yes, there, Sultan does capture with those 2 pieces up. So now that completely blocks off that horizontal threat at the moment. And any vertical threat that Arch might try to make can be countered by bringing the capstone over towards the center onto d5 here. Sultan's got to be trying to think about how to make his own threat. So if given the time, he might want to play on c1, which would be a threat because of his ability to spread across these 2 squares. Instead of playing a flat or anything like that, it looks like Arch might be preparing for exactly that threat by bringing his own capstone in, b4. The square, b4, not... also before the threat is made, but on square b4. So Sultan needing to decide what to do here. I do think that this capstone placement from Arch, that is really almost exclusively a defensive placement. That doesn't really help him develop any additional threats. Thanks, No Hat Coder, in chat. He's liked my before poetry there. All right, e4 from Sultan. Let's see, what is he figuring with that one? It might just be another option for taking care of this vertical threat. All right, so there is a attack threat from Arch, so he is now threatening to connect anywhere up to the top. So very clearly, any placement up here will not work. Some kind of a capture. Very likely onto d4 right now, I think, given the way Sultan placed on e4 previous move. Yes, so he opts for c4 to the right first. That does look pretty good. And though it is vacating one of the central squares on the board, these 4 center squares are rather coveted. It does kind of move his pieces towards each other, so he's now got a little bit more of a connection going. Arch, of course, likes that center square, so he takes it right back. Oh, yes, Lieutenant Hammer, good point. Good point. The placement on d1 by Arch is also a horizontal threat before all of these moves took place, going across here. So just missing e1. All right, so Sultan brings his capstone over. Arch responds, bringing his capstone onto his own flat, giving him a hard cap as well. This tournament has been the first time I think we've really seen a string of competitive games in a row where players are starting to build that hard capstone in the late beginning of the game. So just in going into the mid game, players tend to want to have that hard cap developed. And it's really seems to have worked out pretty well. It makes for much more threatening capstones, and even when they get a large stack underneath their own pieces, they're still free to throw those capstones across the board to make threats. I will note Sultan is rather down on time, 7.5, while Arch is still up at nearly 11 minutes. By no means a problem for Sultan, but it's something we'll keep an eye on. It will become a problem more quickly if he continues to burn time like this, though. Now, we have not yet seen a single tack threat from SultanPepper. And I have to say, the flat count played has really gone even further in Arch's favor. There are still only 8 flat stones. So you can see there's 2 left in this third stack for Sultan. So there's only 8 been played, whereas Arch has... So it looks like 13 flat stones out on the board. Okay, Sultan does finally decide to bring his capstone down. D5 down. This is something I am guessing we might see e1 from Arch. Renews the horizontal threat at the least. So that would give him this connection. And with the hard capstone here, Arch just has to jump his capstone down 1 square to complete that road. And yes, we do see e1, so now Sultan should have a reply prepared for this. He might even want to spread this stack Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, he can just on this move. He can take this whole stack with his capstone. Yes, he does go. He does go with the spread. So that does shut down that threat on the bottom of the board. However, doing that, and this may be something Arch kind of accounted for, Sultan's capstone is now way down here. It is no longer helping to head off the threat that Arch was building back at the beginning of the game. And with where... Let's get a little bit of a tilt so we can count these pieces a little more easily. I'll make sure I'm not cutting anything off on this view. I want to keep those reserve stacks in view as well, though. We got to keep an eye on that. All right, that looks good. And we see the first wall coming in from Arch. It's kind of an interesting use of it. E3 walled. He is very likely wanting to retake this stack on D3. Sultan replies pretty quickly, F4. So that would give Arch the option of capturing that. That's really what he wanted. No, instead he opts to spread his capstone out, going down, C4 down, all the way to C2, covering up pieces from Sultan. He must be concerned about having all those black pieces there. I didn't see them as really that big of a threat, especially with the wall in play. But I suppose the wall could easily just be flattened by Sultan. So this could be kind of a dividing tactic from Arch, too, that this move positions his capstone to retake this bottom pile of his own captives if Sultan were to abandon it to smash the wall on the top pile of captives. All right, Sultan plays on C4. He's picking up one of these center squares. So now we'll see if Arch is going to execute this plan. He does. Our wall captures onto D3. Now Sultan has a decision to make here. Does he let archvenison recover those captives? And he would probably want to prevent him from spreading upward. No, he doesn't. Instead, he plays on B4. And Arch replies very quickly with a flat on D4. Looks like we're going to want to go back into a little bit of a higher view. Make sure we don't miss this. Okay, so Sultan, A4, Arch, D5. And while neither of these capstones... Oh, there we go. I was going to say, neither is pinned. They are in a little bit of a precarious situation. So now that is attack threat from Sultan. He decides to flatten the wall, and because he makes this attack threat where he just has to hop his capstone down, it does force Arch to do something besides recover this stack. Arch replies with D4 to the left, preventing Sultan from completing the road, and making attack threat of his own. Horizontally here, from this side of the board to this side of the board. Sultan's going to have a little bit of a worry about holding this off. Arch has a lot of good positioned stones. Looking at the number of reserves left, Arch is still 5 stones in the lead. However, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just in these 2 stacks, there are 6 of them held captive. So they are not actively being used right now. It does still give Arch the potential to recover them, though, and that is the situation where he's setting himself up. He's setting himself up to have a big swing in the game, where he might think that he isn't making a threat, but he can recover captives and spread a long distance. Okay, got a few comments in the chat here I want to take a look at. No Hats mentioning 2d3 to the left loses. I assume he... Yeah, he must have calculated out the whole line on that one. Basically, giving this stack back to Arch without having some way to block it looks really bad. Actually, this is very likely I think this might be a Tinue for Arch if he captures this stack. Let me take a quick look. Oh, I'm sorry. He I don't know. Sultan just must have given up. That may have been a Tinue that I didn't recognize. I mean, this is it. All Arch has to do is place a flat. Indeed. All right, so archvenison takes game number 1. I'm not sure if that's a situation where Sultan did not see that particular threat. But that is how TAC goes sometimes. That even, as you can see, even the best players sometimes forget to account for the capstone being a part of the road. So if you've ever done that, don't feel bad. All right, let's check in with the players real quick. I'm going to have to count up tiebreaker on this one. So why don't I actually do that? Are they? No, they are not playing yet. All right, so let's do a quick count for the tiebreak. So Arch wins. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, let me get this a higher view for counting flats. Actually, I will do that off stream. I'm gonna go ahead and go set you guys off for a brief intermission. Should be just a few minutes. These players didn't have that long of a game to start with, so we will be back in just a few for game 2. right, welcome back to game 2 between SultanPepper and archvenison here. Players are in game and ready, so we are just waiting for them to take off. All right. Sultan places Arch down on F1, and Arch places Sultan on A1. We have standard adjacent corners. And Sultan continues into the center. Looks like we will get a vertical split. Not that it matters. And Sultan prefers this move here. I've seen this in a couple of his games now in the tournament, where instead of continuing the straight vertical threat, he tends to want to be diagonally connected to his piece in the initial corner. Arch opts for D2, so he's making a slightly more direct threat now. He's closer to completing that vertical connection. Sultan brings the capstone in on E3, pretty standard placement, and now Arch gets to decide what he wants to do next. We've seen pretty frequently something like C5 here, basically bringing those pieces to wrap around sort of the other player's corner of the board. Instead, a little bit more unusual, Arch we see with a capstone on C2. Now, the first game, Arch waited quite a while to bring his capstone into play. I don't remember what move exactly it was, but this is quite a bit sooner than it was the first time. And B4 from Sultan. So Sultan's built himself a citadel of pieces here. 4 pieces adjacent to each other. And now we see Arch playing on C5. So getting his capstone in at the bottom here, and then continuing the kind of wrap around the top of Sultan's pieces. Sultan might opt for something like B5 here, kind of give a little bit of worry about making that vertical connection, but no, instead he plays E4. So it looks like he might be going for more of a horizontal build than I expected, or he might just be making sure that any vertical threat here, pardon this chicken scratch there, any vertical threat here from Arch is able to be easily countered. And then Arch replies with B5, so he has completed really wrapping around the top of Sultan's pieces. Sultan plays on A4, making a connection finally with the left edge of the board. So he's got something to work with here. And now we're getting into the position where even if Arch does complete a threat, say D1 or, there we go, B6, so that is attack threat, and Sultan immediately brings his capstone over. No hesitation, very easy counter, and it's beneficial for Sultan because he can place on F4, make his own threat that he'll bring his capstone up. Arch replies to bring his capstone up, C2 upward there. Now, unlike the first game, let me get a little bit of a perspective on the board here. Unlike the first game, the players spent some time building up their board position and then both hopped their capstones onto their own pieces to give themselves hard caps. In this game, both players have hopped onto the other player's piece, so these capstones are not going to be good at smashing walls. Sultan hops his capstone upward, making a threat horizontally across the board. Arch has got to decide how to respond. Very likely to be a capture, yes. Brings his capstone up to mirror what Sultan had been doing. And Sultan just fills that square hit Arch left back in, C3 for a white flat. And Arch responds likewise. D3 and then C2 from Sultan. So now it looks like archvenison might be going for slightly horizontal or just defensive placement here. E3 might give him a chance to connect to this edge of the board. Also gives him the chance to capture upward. I can only guess this is in a hope of freeing up his own capstone. Sultan on A2. Sultan is taking over this entire bottom left corner of the board at this point. He's building himself, I don't know what you would call that. A super citadel of some kind. Arch responds E5. So perhaps building some sort of a horizontal threat across the top. So Sultan does have a dominating presence in this area of the board, but it really does mean he has less elsewhere. It's always a trade-off. And F5 from Sultan. Worried a little bit about that horizontal threat. And F4 from Arch. Trying to continue to be threatening, basically. He can capture upward. Start forcing some moves out of Sultan. F3 from Sultan. So Sultan's also starting to get ready to build a threat. Capturing downward here would be a threat with his own capstone hopping down. But we're going to see what Arch does if he makes a threat first. And A6. So yes, he does. So that connects Arch to the left side of the board. All he needs to do is capture upward here, or he could capture upward here, actually. It'd be the same kind of thing connected through there. So Sultan's got a decision to make on how to reply to this. Obviously, he'd love to make his own threat, but there's no way to do it in one move just now. All right, so he does F5 to the left. That seems a decent reply. Arch is probably going to look to lay a flat somewhere up in these squares. It's difficult to say. F5 is moderately attractive for doing that. Of course, he does need to watch out for this upcoming threat from Sultan. But I think that is not going to be too difficult to handle. He needs to be careful for sure, though. There are some bits of this capture sequence that I am not certain about. So, like, if he captures down, Arch could capture to the right. Then that leaves this square open, so I would expect just another flat here from Sultan. And then he's made a connection he would have made a connection all the way through to here, so. All right, wall from Arch up on E6. Seeing the wall come in, hopefully gonna recover that captive down here, right? Sultan's got the option to make this threat, though. Just this giant conglomeration of pieces from Sultan, I think, is going to serve him pretty well. Placing E2 for Sultan could be interesting also. Kind of a preparation move. Yeah, there you go, Sultan. There you go. So that is preparing. Sultan can next capture down here, and that gives him kind of a double tack threat across the board in this way. So he can bring his capstone to either of these two squares, D2 or D3. I'm not sure. I don't think Arch has a good way to stop that. He could probably capture F4 downward. Okay, and Arch just goes for it, brings the wall, takes that stack back. He might end up using that, actually. That stack he can use to if Sultan captures downward here. Arch could use this stack to hop down to E3. That would probably be the response. Okay, and Sultan decides he needs a wall up at the top here. D6 wall. And that has to be, yeah, just that's purely defensive. There's nothing he's going to be able to, none of his own captures he can free there. All right, and this is attack threat from Arch. Horizontally through here. All he's got to do is move this white stone and his wall off. So Sultan brings that wall down. That's the whole reason that was put there. And it looks like Arch is just going to maybe build around there. So D6. Not particularly threatening because there's two more squares that are basically needed before that's going to start connecting. So I think we should see Sultan make a threat. He might even go for another prep move of F2, which would be a threat on its own. Could be fairly, I almost want to say devastating. It would be a very difficult threat to stop with the connection on F2. I mean, it's so if we've got a white stone here, that's immediately a threat. And then we'd end up with some kind of maybe capture over this way would be the best start. And then we would see another white flat, and yeah, that's quite a rough, messy area. Sultan's weighing his options, doing some calculations, no doubt. Players both great on time this game. Arch is just under 11 minutes. Sultan's just gone down below 10 himself. So no time pressure at all for either player. We got to keep in mind, too, it's not been relevant for a while. Sultan does have a connection to the bottom edge of the board as well. So there are multiple things that could happen. These are his farthest connections in both directions right now. But if any of this situation changes, okay, Sultan opts for the cap throw right now. This is the calculation he had to have been working on. So he's got the connection across here. So now what does Arch do? How does Arch stop this? He can't place because there's a capture that immediately wins through here. The capstone throw might be an option. He's going to leave two white stones here, however. And with two there, yeah, with two stones there, one of them can come on capture this stack. And then we've got a connection around this way, so it's still connected. And with all of these stones up here, it's the capstone, Arch's capstone is going to have a hard time. It's not going to be able to keep up with all of the different routes that come through here. Almost every block that Arch has, the threat can be immediately renewed. Looking at, let's see, No Hat's got a suggestion in chat, e3 down. That does look like his best option so far. I think e3 down might be met with... Okay, so that is his option. That is his choice. That might be met with a wall from Sultan. Kind of an offensive wall. A flat here from Sultan isn't all that useful because of the double blackstone that he left there, so that spread can happen that way. Ah, capstone back upward now, picking up all of those captives. So now, Sultan's got quite a good threat in this direction. I would not be in the least surprised. Oh, nope, I would say for a wall here, but instead, Arch opts to bring his capstone with 2 of its captives downward. So here's where Sultan can try to start playing games. Yes, d2. So now he has another connection. If Arch moves off of this square, Sultan can just lay a piece there to continue connecting to this left edge. He's got so many options. And then even if Arch does something like bring his capstone to the left, Sultan can play here on a3. Reconnects. Might eventually get to a position where Arch can hold it off. But yes, this is far, far better. I wondered if just placing a wall here might have been just as good, but instead he spread his stack down there, which does have the nice benefit of covering up this e4 square. So now there's a little bit of a threat here back from Arch. He's got connection this way and this way, so he just needs these 2 squares. c4 and d4. Wonder if Sultan, either he missed that option. It's very likely, I would say. There are quite a few options that Arch had for defending, and many of them did not work nearly this well. All right, goes with d4. Flat on d4. Taking that square so that Arch can't work on this horizontal threat as much. And it is still sort of kind of working on a threat for himself. Right through here at this point. If we thought Sultan was getting close to Tinue or a forced win, it does not look like that was the case. Looking at the reserve of pieces left, players are very close here. 14 left for Arch and 13 left for Sultan. And there we go. I was just going to point out that after Arch completes his turn, if he places, which he did on c4, players are exactly even on the number of pieces they have out on the board right now. Sultan playing on c6. I don't know if he's interested in trying to make this vertical connection a little bit. It's going to be tough. Or he might just be looking to have a piece that's a little bit more engaged with these pieces from Arch. All right, so e5 from archvenison. Not a attack threat quite yet. Okay, an f2 from Sultan. All right, I don't know. We just saw a message saying the server is going down. This might be an issue. So we are going to take a quick intermission here and find out what happened. And I will be right back. All right, folks. Apologies for that technical difficulties. The server apparently did actually reboot itself. We're not entirely sure if that was planned maintenance or not. We'll have to check that out after this match has ended. But players have reconnected, and after discussion with them, opted to basically recreate the game from the beginning. So each player has their move list, and we'll be playing back the same moves up through move of SultanPeppers on move 26. So I'm just going to be doing a quick check as they run through here to make sure we're playing the same moves. So far we are on track. And the players, we opted to set the game clock to give each player 5 minutes plus 20 seconds. So by the time they get done replaying, they will be sort of close to the amount of time they had left. Neither player was in any kind of time crunch, so and both players were actually fairly close in time as well. So we're not no one was too concerned with any issues being present there after this option. I can make 100% accurate predictions for this portion of the game, however. So we should see F3, and then we should see A6. Not a particularly exciting portion, so I do apologize for that issue, but this is the best way we could determine to continue the match and maintain the integrity of the game that the players had been working very hard on playing. Thank you for the note, Lieutenant Hammer, about the volume. Let me take a quick look at the volume levels here. All right, tweak that down a bit for the music and background sound, so thanks for mentioning that. Players are getting close. We're nearly caught back up. Only about 5 moves per player left, and then we will be continuing on live. So I will let you know once they are caught up. Six. All right, tricky move here from Sultan. 3 from D4. That was not the move, so he will need to undo that. There we go. Undo move from him. All right. Again, I do apologize. This is not the most exciting part of the game, but we 4 more moves and we'll be back to letting the players battle this out. They will have, it looks like, about a minute or 2 extra time over what they did. So this should just be E3 minus, E3 down. There we go. D2, all 3 from D2 up, and 3 from C4 down. Right, good. D2, 3 from E5. So this is where, yes, we had Arch find a pretty good defense here. 2 squares down there. And then D4, C4, C6, E5, and F2. All right, these are all just placements, so players should get there pretty quickly. E5, F2. All right, so we are pretty much back to live here. All right, so Sultan said he is going to let their time get closer to equal. All right, so we are back to live. Both players got, it looks like, about 2 extra minutes on their clock, which is fair. Give them a minute or two to kind of get back into the mental state of where they left the game off. All right, Arch knew what he was going for there. So we are back now live playing, the players playing E6. So that is attack threat from Arch going right across here. All you got to do is capture. Now that is the sole job of this C6 stone from Sultan. I expect he will capture over onto D6. This wall is pinned because of the potential for a road going right through it. So Sultan's taking his time deciding. And he has the time to take. I mean, I guess he could try moving the wall that direction, but that's going to get rough, especially if Arch opts. Oh, he decides to move it the other direction. All right, so on top of the one that would capture. Makes sense. I would expect Arch to just retake, or place, rather not take, but place onto D5. Indeed, he does. That is not a threat. But it puts him in position to attempt to make one. Oh, I'm sorry, that is a threat. My mistake. His capstone is lined up, of course. So his capstone can flatten that wall. And we have a road right through there. So now... All right, so C6 to the left. Might see that one get filled in. That would be a threat. Might see A5 filled in. I don't know. I like C6 as the threat. It's possible Arch could opt to still flatten that wall. Because now, sort of in the way that Sultan has a huge peace majority over in this region, Arch has this whole area. He's got overlapping citadels going on here. That is a very, very difficult hold to break. And this wall is currently doing a lot of work. I think he's probably calculating if he flattens that wall, what will happen. It also matters how he leaves these captives behind if he does so. He certainly can't leave all of them on C4. He goes for it. He goes for it. He leaves 2 behind on C3. So now, Sultan, he is just shy of a threat himself, and this is attack threat from Arch. He's got the build across here, so he could place on a5. He can move a6 down, or he can spread this stack over. If there's a wall there, he probably will just end up... Oh, if there's a wall there, I would expect b5 up, making the connection here and opting with 2 squares to connect to this other half of the road. So that leaves it for Sultan to try to find something else. And he is in a similar position with his capstone. So many, looks like 4 black captives underneath there. There's options. Okay, yeah, thank you, Lieutenant Hammer. I was kind of just looking for something. d4 going up. That just results in a5, I believe. Which is then a threat here on c6, of course, and spreading the capstone over. This is a pretty rough position for Sultan. And I mean, looking at the board, like flat count wise, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 versus Arch's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 3 flat lead. And this is a very unusually concentrated area. Obviously, Arch left some of these behind to create that, but it is an incredible concentration of white flat stones. Sultan is burning through his time, even though they got that extra couple of minutes. Sultan is down below 7 minutes now, into the 6:45 just there. Archvenison's up at 8:22. Sultan's... He's clearly giving this a shot, but... anything I do see seems precarious. I mean, like, d4 up is... yeah, all right, and Sultan opts for that. All right, so I'm expecting a5. So the problem with anything that Sultan wants to do with this capstone is that he's going to leave a black piece behind on d4. And that will, if Arch makes this connection now, that's just immediately another threat that he can connect by moving his capstone up to connect across there. So from here, I gotta say a5 from Arch. He could go for c6. That might be a little safer. Gets it even further from this white capstone. Yeah, the more I look at that, I am starting to like c6 more. Even if Sultan does capture onto there, gives Arch the chance to bring his capstone up onto that pile with even more of his own captives beneath it. And then he's just got this capstone and this whole 6th rank to just spread back and forth across as needed. All right, he opts for a5, See what the continuation is from there. So this is, yet again, attack threat. Through here, he can place on c6. He can spread his capstone to the right. Actually, and he can capture d6 down. Sultan hasn't got too much to respond with. Like something like b4 up might make things annoying, but I don't think it does more than that, because then I do think c6 would get taken, which is not an immediate attack threat. And I guess that is something that if you give Sultan even one move, that could give him the chance. All right, I know Hat's agreeing b4 up is the least bad. Yeah, b6 down, not as good because of the extra captive it brings into play here. I think we see 3 from c5 to the left. So he ends up with 3 of his own captives underneath there. Actually, we still see c6 first, even. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we did see that capture because this is a threat from Sultan. So we do need to see that capture from Arch. Hopefully he realizes that. I thought of it, and then I forgot it. It so often happens. Arch, what you gonna do? All right, he does opt for that. 3 from c5 to the left. That is attack threat. He's got the threat of spreading. He's got the threat of just placing. I don't think... Oh, interesting. That almost definitely would have been a Tinue. As No Hat pointed out, if he'd taken this piece with him, that would have actually been a threat to spread vertically. Very interesting. Not something I was considering at all. And this is why No Hat is currently awaiting the challenger for the first place in the tournament. So Sultan evaluating yet again. I'm sure he would love to get this capstone into play, but releasing captives there is not going to be great. All right, he does a4 up. I mean, this is just, yeah, a6 down. Completely new threat again. So now he's just getting more and more simplified here. The threat is this way. So here and here. And of course, it's this stack that's giving him all that power. I do think that is it. I don't see a way for Sultan to stop this. He can't... If he brings his capstone... Oh. So Sultan basically concedes via road suicide. So he decided to complete the road for Arch himself. So good game there from both players. And that means that SultanPepper, our defending champion from 2016, he has been eliminated. So that would put Sultan, I believe, into 4th place for the tournament here. Let me go ahead and pull up the bracket and update that. And then we will real quickly go over where things stand currently and what we have coming up. So archvenison takes the 2nd game and the whole match. All right, so Do a quick refresh on the bracket. And then let's take a look where we stand. So, Archvenison takes the win over SultanPepper today. So now we are looking at the next matchup we have is Fwibib versus Archvenison. Now, Fwibib went all the way through to the finals of the winner bracket before getting knocked down. Archvenison, he was actually knocked out by Fwibib in the very first round. So we're seeing a rematch from the very beginning of this finals tournament bracket. So next match will be Fwibib versus Archvenison. We will get the players to schedule that as soon as possible. And we are now moving into the prize rounds. That match is for the opportunity to move on to the finals and face No Hat Coder. But even the loser of that upcoming match will be in third place and will be awarded a prize as a result. So these players have all made it into prize position at this point. Well done, well played. Thank you to SultanPepper for playing so well and so hard in this whole tournament. It's sad to see him not get to try to defend his title, but all of the players this year have really upped their game. So thank you everybody for playing. Thank you all of you viewers out there for watching. If you weren't watching, there wouldn't be any reason for me to do this, so I thank you for that. If you're interested in TAC or want to learn more about the US TAC Association, you can definitely check us out at ustac.org. And again, thank you to our sponsors, Wormwood Gaming, and thank you to Andrew Cookson for the other beautiful prizes. And we will announce it, of course, on our social media when the next match is scheduled, or you can find the information on the tournament website bracket where all of that information is kept, and where this bracket you can see on the screen is coming from. Thank you everybody for watching. I will see you in the next match.